what's going on here, but apparently I've got to go live on each and every platform.
I can't even.
Yeah, but I've got these other platforms that keep popping up. Okay, it's not letting me go live on Twitter. Okay. So, brother.
Yeah.
Let's start with unpacking your journey. So, where were you born? Where did you spend your formative and adolescence years? What's your family class background? And can you describe your journey to Black and Africana studies? So in answering all of that, I want you to tell me the era in which you came to maturity as well. So.
All right. And so you want that to be a short answer too, right?
No. To be expansive.
Who are you, brother? Who are you? Where did you come from?
Those are the questions Black folks ask. Who's your people? Where are you from?
No, I don't mind. I don't mind at all. All right, where did we start? All right, so I was born in New York. I was born in Harlem. I was born in I'm forgetting the name of the hospital now. Sydenham Hospital. They tore it down later. I think in the 80s, there was a protest movement about that. I wasn't around then. Anyway, but my folks split up. So in 64, my mom took the 3 kids. I was in the middle back to her hometown of East St. Louis, Illinois. And so that's where I lived, 64 to 1976. That's where I lived. Perhaps I should say that's where I survived. All right, so there's that. Let me see. Went off to college. After college, lived in Atlanta for a lot of years. Career-wise, man, I didn't really have one. I mean, I had jobs, but when I was young, when I was in my 20s, I mean, like everybody in their 20s, I suppose, I had these idealistic notions. I had these cultural organizations. I had a group. We did some things. Some people remember from Atlanta in the mid-'80s, probably remember the John Coltrane Society fondly. We did like some cultural programming and such. What I want to say, how do we get to like this whole college professor thing? In the 90s, there were people I knew, people I had known, people I met who had gone the academic route and who were really encouraging me to pursue that just from the standpoint of they thought that there was now potentially a market in academia for the kind of things that I thought interesting, which is something that I never necessarily thought was possible. Added on to the fact that when I left college in 81, I was like, man, academia is not for me. Academia is not for me. And I took a vow that I would never do that again. And so 17 years later, I had to go back on that vow. So went up to UMass and, did that,
Where did you go?
John Tracy, among others. All those people who were up there, Michael Thelwell, William Strickland, who am I leaving out? Ernest Allen. Yeah, some other people like that. So I was up there, and then from there down here to the wilds of Kentucky at the University of Louisville. Been here actually since 2005, which I guess is 20 years now, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah,
you probably said a whole lot more that I didn't get to. Parents. All right. So my parents. Well, so they met at Howard University in the late 40s. He finished. I think he came, then he went to the war. This is World War II we're talking. Came back. I think they met after he came back. I don't know, because she's about 5 years younger. Anyway, she didn't finish. You know what happened? So we're talking like, well, they got married in 51. She's 22 years old then. And, because this is somebody who had, she would go on much later, right, to pursue her education, get a master's degree in education, had positions in the school system back in East St. Louis and such like that. But all that to say, you know what I mean? Like, and certainly one reason, not necessarily the only one, but certainly one reason why they got divorced. I mean, there she was, like, the housewife thing. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Right.
I mean, that just didn't work. Well, that ultimately, obviously, didn't work for her. Like I said, it wasn't just a housewife thing. I mean, that was a real divorce. But all I have to say, just talking about, you mentioned something about structures in society and everything. And so, this society is structurally so absolutely masculinist, right?
Right.
And
Right.
girl, you know what I mean? She also might have pursued a career and might have, like some of the stuff she did later in life. So I'm a child of middle-class parents, all that to say, although certainly their parents weren't. You know what I mean?
But you from East Saint, brother. You raised in East Saint. Now, we cannot allow the conversation to not delve into the cultural significance of East Saint. And if I heard you correctly, you say you moved into East Saint, did you say in the late 50s?
64. 64.
So when you moved to East Saint, it was majority white.
Well, I
Slim
think
majority. Slim majority.
Maybe
it was still governed by white folk. So you lived through the change.
I did. I remember our first mayor and all that stuff.
It became a 98% black community.
Yes. So what do I remember? I don't really. So here's the thing. I moved there in 64. I don't really remember a lot of white people. Some don't remember a lot because obviously there still would have been a racial segregation.
It was almost half of the population in 64.
Say it one more time. I missed it. I missed what you said.
Black folks were almost half of the population in 64. White people had a slim majority.
Yeah. So I'm thinking like in the school system, like coming through school. I mean, black teachers certainly outnumbered white teachers, but there were a lot of white teachers during my years there. You know what I mean? Probably less of that now, 50 years since. I had white neighbors in one of the places we moved, but I mean, one of your questions was talking about like racial consciousness and such.
Yeah.
So what do I remember about that? So, I'm gonna tell you, man. You talked about the racial composition of the town being like a mix or something like that. But like, I mean, my sense of things is that I grew up in a black town. You know what I mean? I grew up around black people. I didn't interact with a lot of white people. Maybe like some people who like own a store or something like that. And like I say, a couple of teachers. But I don't even remember any white teachers from elementary school, from Paul Lawrence Dunbar Elementary School down there on 19th Street. I don't remember white teachers there, really.
What high school did you go to?
East Side. East Side. Okay. Yeah, Lincoln was still in existence, but it was definitely the junior child by that point, East Side. And East Side, okay, coming back to that. East Side had white students in it. They were vastly outnumbered. By the time I get to East Side, it's 1973, and
yeah. White flight is goddamn fast moving in East Saint in 73.
Like I say, I was a kid for like the 60s, but like I say, I don't really remember. Like I say, I reflect upon my coming up as having grown up in a black town, as opposed to, a mixed town that eventually.
So what does that mean for you in terms of consciousness and culture? Because East St. Louis was a center of a vibrant black culture.
I don't know if it was like that so much, when I was coming along, although, you had folks like Eugene Redmond and doing that stuff, but I was too young for any of that such. He did know my mother and maybe even my sister or something like that. But when you're talking about like as a kid in the 60s, and then like I said, I graduated high school in 76. I don't have any real sense of that, right? I don't have any real sense of, there was all this stuff happening because I was a kid and I didn't know how to drive. I ain't going nowhere when I was a kid anyway. So there could have been,
and Black Liberators. What about Corn and Black Liberators? Did they get on your radar?
Well, see now, they're like active, 69, 70?
Yeah.
So like I'm 11, 12. you know? So no, you know what I mean? No. As far as I probably need to go back and actually look at this, because I do remember one night there was something that my mother referred to as a riot, but I think it was a little bit lesser than that. Like, I think it was just a disturbance. But I remember the next day, this is when we used to live in the projects at Orweathers. I remember, there being like signs of disarray out in the neighborhood, but like there wasn't no like major.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. I don't remember it. But like I said, once again, you're a kid, and there's only so much you would remember. You know what I mean? There's only so much you would have been aware of at the time.
Right. You were probably 3-4 years away from being at an age where those things would have an impact on you, because you'd be old enough to participate. But here's a question that's strictly for my own personal edifice. I'm a scholar of Black towns, and so I wrote the book America's First Black Town on Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, yes.
Brooklyn, did you run through Brooklyn?
Not when I was there. Not when I was there. Later on, he became aware of. I mean, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I don't even remember being aware of there's some place called Brooklyn when I was living there.
Well, they called it Lovejoy. That was the popular name.
Okay, Lovejoy, I remember, and there's this other one. There's this other name, this other neighborhood out that way that I can't quite remember. But no, to Brooklyn, I know nothing about it. Later on, as an adult, I think I probably tried to drive through there. I think that's where my man Hamiet Bluiett, the baritone saxophonist, was from.
Yeah. Absolutely, that's where he's from. Yeah.
Yeah. So really, like I say, I have no. Like I said, I drove through it later just to, and there ain't really going to be much to see in the 1990s or the 2000s.
Absolutely. No, that's the down period. But it was a kicking place, up until the 50s, up through the 50s.
Man, there's all kind of history. We got all kind of places, really, man. So yeah. I'm glad you wrote that book, man. I'm very glad you wrote that book. Okay, one thing I think I left out, or at least didn't get to directly, you talked about like development of racial consciousness. Yeah. So, what can I really remember about that? Certainly, there's nothing I actually can remember from grade school years. We get into the junior high school era, and you're learning more about this history. This isn't quite exactly. This is on point. This is relevant. I developed like a very strong alienation from the social studies curriculum that we were getting back then, and back then and now. And the story of America that was told. So I wouldn't necessarily say you wouldn't necessarily talk about consciousness as such, but I was like, man, what are y'all talking about? This is some BS. You know what I mean? This is y'all are not who you say you are, man. Right. And why are they in assembly in junior high school trying to get us to stand up for this damn national anthem when this thing doesn't represent anything for who I consider myself to be as Black people? But I didn't have anything really developed in terms of consciousness. The one thing that I do remember, and I'll stop here, high school. So this too, probably, how East St. Louis was a major athletic powerhouse.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so one of the things that became really apparent, in the high school years, because East Side, the football team, they would be winning state and all that kind of such. But what you did become aware of is that these football programs in these white areas were surrounding East St. Louis. And that's another thing. And anyway, let me not get too derailed. But you realize the profound economic, financial disparity. And so I remember having that particular thought just in terms of, hey, you know what I mean? This system, white people got all the money. And here we go.
When you travel to those schools, the disparity is just blatant.
So that was something. Now, you and I may have briefly mentioned this when you came on our PAS and Friends thing for the Malcolm X tribute.
Right.
And I was talking about how, hey, I read this book in the 11th grade, Malcolm X's autobiography, that is to say. And that's kind of really.
What motivated you to read it?
Huh? I'm sorry?
What motivated you to read Malcolm X's autobiography in your junior year?
Well, that's a good question. There's a possibility that it was in the house from my sister having bought it. That's a significant possibility. As a matter of fact, just in terms of my sense of myself and things I kind of got hip to, because me and my sister like not close at all, anything like that. But like, I go back and reflect and I go like, hey, dude, she actually hipped you to a few things. You know, you knew who Nina Simone was before you knew who Nina Simone was. Okay. And some other things like I think that this is a way back. You remember that Wanda Robinson poetry album, Black Ivory, I think it was called. Do you remember that?
I don't.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, so even though we weren't close, the fact that she actually was getting into some stuff, I think I inherited a little bit of that stuff. And I'm not sure about the Malcolm X book, if that is the source, but that's a significant possibility. Other than that, I don't really have a theory of how I came to have that book in my possession.
How did it impacted you, though? What's your reaction to reading the book?
Oh, well, you start talking about things like, racial consciousness or Black consciousness. You were captivated by the story. And he immediately, in ways that you may have recognized at the time and ways that you probably couldn't recognize at the time, became just a major influence in terms of, some of the basic ways that you think about the world, So I would say that. I mean, I would say I already had developed a critique of the United States and the mythology of the United States that would only have been made like so much more acute by reading that book. And, hey, man, Malcolm X, I'm glad to have met him. I'm glad to have met him, literally speaking, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, you mentioned going to UMass. What was the motivation to do Black studies? Right? You could have done history, sociology. What's the motivation there?
Well, I mean, so to give credit to people like Charles Jones, who's the former president, was he the one before you, or was the president of NCBS in between y'all?
I was his vice president for 2 terms.
Akinyele Umoja, who's still down there at Georgia State, he actually introduced me to Charles, and he's one of these people. And then I had a buddy, Salim Washington. Where is he? He's somewhere. He's in Los Angeles. He's not necessarily Black studies as such, but still, I would think those are the people, a couple of them are my peers, Charles a few years ahead. But when I was mentioning like how people were saying, listen, man, you like to, explore, topics relevant to us, our history, our culture and such. Listen, there actually is a space for somebody to pursue that in academia where, it can maybe not just be this sort of side thing that you do, you could actually do this. And that took some convincing, but I went ahead and gave it a shot because, what are we talking about that now? 97, 98, I'm about to turn 40. And, the direction forward just generally, right. So that seemed like a path. Why not? You know what I mean? Let's do it. And then the Department of Afro-American Studies up at UMass, you know what I mean? Let me in. They said later, Esther Terry said later, well, we had our doubts just because the stuff you said you were interested in, we didn't necessarily have anybody specializing in, because I think I was running the whole jazz.
Okay, so you were always in the jazz. That's the piece. Well, so how did you? Is it just I could see growing up in East St. Louis, right? And of course, St. Louis was also a big place for jazz. That you got into it. Now Brooklyn's blues, but So you just naturally grew up under jazz and then decided to take it on as an academic area of study.
No, I don't think I really describe it like that. What would I say? How would I do this?
Yeah.
So I went off to college, like to an extremely white place. It's kind of famous, Harvard University.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, you heard of it. They've been in the news lately, and what I want to say. That was, I guess it wasn't random. It wasn't random that I ended up there, but that wasn't on my radar screen at all. So in terms of the whole, I think this is all right. Anyway, so I ended up at that place. I had every intention of going to school in Illinois. You know what I mean? But what happened is,
Urbana?
Yeah, Illinois, or I think I was looking at Bradley, and I think my sister went to Northwestern, so I was looking at that, and she was like, "Don't come," and that was a good idea, just because anyway, because I already told me and her didn't have the real good vibe. She was like,
sure Gracie helped you.
But I was gonna go in state. You know what I mean? There was a greater financial, in terms of.
Oh yeah. They had that big scholarship. Absolutely.
But the issue was, you gave me back then. You gave me one of those standardized tests, and I was going to do the 99th percentile, And so in the mid-'70s, doing that, a black kid from East St. Louis, so I ended up getting recruited, all that to say, by all those big-name places, Princeton, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, and probably some others. And I didn't apply to all of them. I applied to a couple of them. But they weren't on my radar screen. In other words, I wasn't trying to do that.
Right.
And then you talk it over with the parents, because I think I got in most places. I think somebody might have turned me down, now that I think about it. I ain't thought about that stuff in 50 years. But anyway, Harvard let me in. And so you have the conversation with the parents.
Right.
And I'll tell you, well, here's something else that's actually interesting in retrospect. My father, a diehard Howard alum. I don't remember ever even mentioning it. And this is the whole thing. This is a whole history piece there as well.
That's interesting.
Well, it's interesting, but see, this is also generational, the time period and such like that. But just to say, I said, okay, listen, I could go to, I don't remember which place in Illinois. I said this place or Harvard. And I put it to them, and they didn't come out and say it. They didn't come out and say it, but I went to Harvard for them. You know what I mean? I went because I knew that was something that they wanted and dug. And I'll say that and that's how I ended up there, really. I mean, it wasn't really Harvard didn't, it didn't mean nothing to me. You know what I mean? I had no ambition or anything like that. But anyway, that's background. Up there, 76. And, so I just think that whole process of being really kind of surrounded, by this, what's the word? Less than hospitable, environment. I think that, also helped to create further alienation from the system and from the society, as if I really needed that. But also, you're at that age too, where you are exploring, you are trying to learn such like that. And anyway, you know what? This is relevant, but you asked specifically about jazz. So let me cut to the all this stuff is relevant, but here's the deal. I told you my folks were divorced, so my father's living in Westchester County. And so you have these school breaks, and what did I do? Catch the train down? Anyways, to hang out in the basement, right? And in the basement, you know what I mean? My man had the stereo, had all these records that he wasn't playing anymore. Because, by that point in life, he's what, 50? So, you ain't playing. Well, he wasn't playing those records, but they were down there. And so the Loneliest Monk at Town Hall was down there. I stole that record from him. But the big two, I I stole some more. I stole all the ones I'm sure that I don't remember what I stole and didn't, because you could blah. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. The big two, right? Kinda Blue by Miles Davis.
Mm.
My Favorite Things by John Coltrane.
Ooh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? And, if you got any young people listening, they won't remember, but you're old enough to remember. You had the phonographs, and you could set it up so you would play the record again and again and again.
Oh,
and so,
absolutely. Yeah.
So both of
And
those
you had the combination,
yeah,
TV, radio, and stereo. Yeah.
So that's where I want to put it. All that other stuff I said is actually relevant, but really it was the direct exposure to, John Coltrane, like I said, on My Favorite Things and on Kinda Blue. I mean, the rest of Kinda Blue as well. I'm not trying to low rate Miles and Cannonball and who was that? Paul Chambers, and I'm leaving somebody out. I'm leaving the drummer out. I'm leaving the drummer out, man. I think it's Jimmy Cobb. Because it wasn't Philly Joe Jones. All right, I might be getting in the weeds for some people now.
Yeah.
But
So here's the thing, but I do want you to kind of go in the weeds. So look, man, let's say the audience and I are in your class.
Okay.
Yeah. So what are we going to learn about African American music, African American culture? Is there going to be a connection to the African lineage of the music? Or is it going to be diasporian connections? Is there going to be,
Well,
if we're sitting in your class, what we getting, man?
Well, if you're sitting in my class and it's about like jazz or music, then like
The music class.
that's something a little different, because we since I've been here, we have we have had professors who are affiliated with our department with Pan-African Studies, but are housed in the music department. And Jerry Tolson, actually, he did that for almost all the time I've been here. He just very recently retired. And so, I mean, he had these rotating classes every semester. He would be doing these African-American music classes and also like a jazz class, and pretty much every semester. And those, you're over in the music department, I don't know what they had the setup is, but those would always be large classes, right?
Okay.
So, often maybe even up to like 100 or more. So all that to say, in terms of the space for myself to do like the music or the jazz thing, it's really already covered, within our curriculum. So I haven't done it. I haven't done that much. I have done African American music a few times, not in a while. So the music classes, and I'll get to you. I mean, I'll come back to the jazz thing for real. But the music classes that I've been teaching in recent years are pretty much undergraduate classes. So a rhythm and blues class on reggae music. I think those are the two main music classes I have that are in rotation. I have felt for many years, actually, that I would like to do some more things, more jazz related. But like I said, there is just sort of a basic issue
Right.
curriculum there as well.
Division of labor. So we're in your R&B class. What's happening?
Let's see. What do we do? Damn, I should have had my syllabus out. I haven't taught it in a half a second. Where do we start that thing? I think we started with a whole timeline of race in America. And I like take that first session, or maybe the first week of the first session. Say, listen, if we're going to engage in this whole thing of like this specific, quote unquote, Black musical form, then, we gotta, what is the Black thing? Like, what is that? Right. And the other piece is like, you're just given the basic lack of informedness. I think I just made up a word. Of the American population, and certainly the student population, I mean, you know, I'm sure you found this out. There's literally nothing you can really take for granted that people know. You know what I mean? Literally nothing.
Not
You know,
anymore.
and maybe water is wet, you know, we could probably get some consensus on that, but you can't go much further than water is wet, you know.
That is true.
So not to get long into it, so the whole thing, okay, a quick timeline of race, try to cover that in the time period and race in America. And so where did I start that? Did I start that like in the 1400s, or do I kind of do a, what's the word, a condensed version? So I'll probably start in 1492. You know what I mean? You know, 16. You know these dates, so I'm gonna run them off. You know what I mean? Maybe some other people, you know, you do your 1607, 1619. You do the 1508. I probably shouldn't be doing this. Anyway, you do a quick, you know, in basic orientation, quick history of race, and then you really kind of start that with like 1920 and the whole birth of the race records industry. You know, and then from there, you get to World War II.
I know, but I suspect that there's a lot of people listening who don't know. And people over here. 1920 is the origin of the race records.
Yeah. So just very briefly, as if a college professor is in the business of being brief. They might think they are, but they usually aren't. Anyway, some of y'all heard of race records. So the American commercial recording industry is like a turn of the century thing. You can make records in the 1890s, but they started like, it's in the first decade of the 1900s that you actually making records for commercial consumption. That picks up, and the whole thing is like black people are largely excluded, not absolutely excluded, largely excluded. Got to bring in the Great Migration here as well. So black people are then beginning to move to urban areas, thus potentially creating a market for these urban products, such as these spinning discs. They were 78s. Right. You and I grew up on like 45, 33. These young people today have no idea what we're talking about.
Right.
But anyway, like I said, I was trying to tell a short version. You see, it has not happened. Anyway, this guy named Perry Bradford finally convinces these people at OK Records, hey, listen, I've been trying to tell y'all for years, if y'all make some records by black people, for black people, you're going to make a whole lot of money. And nobody wanted to hear that. But then in 1920 is when Mamie Smith's record, The Crazy Blues, does come out. I think that was on OK Records. It's a sensation. It's a moment in American record industry history. And that's the thing. It kicks off race records because people say, oh, I thought all them Negroes was broke. But I got that 50 cent or 75 cent or however much it costs to buy these records, and boom, you know, people have heard of people like Bessie Smith. You may have heard of Ma Rainey. Anyway, that's when black people first started making records. So all of the dynamics of the issues around black people, black artists, black musical artists, trying to create careers and create art that's meaningful, operating in a white, racist, capitalist system, all of the issues that we actually confront, you know, today, 100 years later, are all set up back then in 1920. So that's why 1920 is one of those red letter dates in terms of talking about the black people in the music industry. You know, so yeah, you start there, you get to World War II. So anyway, I think one of the things that I think you may have said in your prompt, you may have mentioned this, I'm not sure, I could be making this up, but you were like, to what extent the you know, musical classes or the information lessons you want to do about music actually, you know, relate to the broader society, the struggle, the issues, the structural inequality and such like that. And my conception baked in. And my conception
ahead of me, but yeah. I want that's precisely where I want to go. And you know, we know that Bessie Smith certainly had songs that spoke to social conditions, right?
True that.
And blues, washerwoman blues, for example.
Yep. No. Absolutely. Yeah. They talked about all kinds of such. all kind of
absolutely.
the kind of person who thinks like everybody in the whole country, and certainly all of us, all Black people, and certainly all Black studies people, you'll need to read Black Pearls by Daphne Duval Harrison, Blues Queens in the 1920s, in which she lays that out. She gives those people their due as artists, as important performers, as also people who like are establishing counter narratives of what the society says Black people should be, at the same time that the industry and perhaps the songwriters themselves cater to those stereotypes. But anyway, see, I'm gonna lapse into like professor mode. But that stuff is real important. The Great Migration, right? You know, I don't know. I mean, I would like that stuff to be basic information, but like, man, nobody knows what you're talking about.
Nothing. Look, based on my experience with the post-COVID student population, there's no basic information.
That is sad, but true.
Water is wet. That was about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that has its own implications. I won't explore them now because I know you got more of an agenda there. And like, let's do it, man.
So here's the thing. Do you know Nick Gaffney at all?
I think you might have introduced me to him at a conference many years ago. I have not really.
I think I did. Now that you bring it up.
This work, I haven't. Did he publish it? I don't even know.
He's published a number of articles, but he's yet to turn the book around. But one of the things that I was intrigued by is, and again, you know, he's picking up Baraka, he's picking up a number of stuff, but he makes a very clear and forceful argument that jazz, in particular, became a resource that was mined by a wide range of activists. So everybody from NAACP to Black nationalists to the Communist Party would use jazz artists to throw fundraisers for them, right?
That's true.
And then he traces this development where one can clearly see that the artists are in advance of maybe the general population, but there's aspects of the movement culture that they're articulating with. And so he talks about different historical moments generating new genres or subgenres within jazz. And he sees that as definitely tied to the struggle. So I'd like you to just react to that thesis.
The basic thesis that like the different different movements or moments in jazz reflect the larger movement of Black
general society, but the liberation movement in particular.
Well, all right. Well, let me do I don't know if it's a plug because an event had already occurred, but you know, because you were in one of the recent ones here at Louisville. The Pan-African Studies Department has this ongoing online symposium, I guess you would call it, PAS and Friends Conversations in Black. And so just this past weekend, we started the SNCC Chronicles because SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, very fascinating subject. No way to even try to even approach just even a sliver of it in one program. So we said, hey, we're just going to start this thing and we're going to do these various aspects. And so we tried to concentrate on 1960, the start of the Black college sit-in movement, which gives birth to SNCC. Anyway, we talked about the various things, the movement, the conference, Ella Baker, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the last slides I put on them, because, it was a conversation, between myself and my colleagues, Charlotta Kenshin and Brandon McCormick, and it was lively and interesting. I think it's worth listening to. It's up on YouTube and such. But toward the end there, I said, hey, listen, I'm probably going to have to take over here. So I put up on a slide of we insist the the Max
Oh,
Roach,
yes.
and put the album cover up. And I was just making the point.
Okay,
Hey,
whoa. Audience may not know.
I'm
You
sure.
got to give Max Roach and Abby.
Oh my God!
Tell folks who they are, and what is that moment. We Insist. What is that album?
Damn, you know what? I should have prepared. I should have no, I don't think I have the capacity to share a screen or anything. So anyway, blah blah blah. Damn, what's the quick version of this? All right, so you talk about Max Roach. Let's just take them individually. Max Roach, you know, one of the world's greatest musicians, one of the great drummers in history. You know, actually is still a major figure going back to the 1940s and really on through his passing in somewhere around 2010 or no, it had to be early. Anyway, blah blah blah. Let me anyway, one of the great artists of all time, you know, if you want to use that language. So all right, so it's that. And Abby Lincoln, also one of the great artists of all time, a singer and actress. They got together in the late 50s and they were for into the late 60s. They were kind of an iconic couple in terms of like Black people, a Black power couple, if you will, you know, these two great Black artists who were together and who represented something, represented commitment to the struggle, represented the highest level of artistic achievement. And so,
see, when you get a Black power couple,
because
it's double entendre, right? They were a
Black power. Once I said it, I was like, I shouldn't have said it because I don't want to unpack it. But I think they were a power couple. They were a Black power couple. But no, we got to get back to 1960, man, quickly. I'm trying to get back to 60. So anyway, anyway, these people have immense legacies. So we're talking about one moment. It's 1960, and as a result of the sit-in movement, right? As a result of the Black college, these are Black college students. Black college meaning HBCU. Because if you were in college and you were Black in 1960, you were attending an HBCU somewhere to the tune of 95%. But they are so taken, and they got together with Oscar Brown. I know you know who Oscar Brown is. Oscar Brown. You don't have time to put all this down. Oscar Brown, he helped to write most of the lyrics, I think. So we had the Freedom Now suite, We Insist, and the album cover is iconic. Anybody listening, go check it out. Just do Max Roach, We Insist, Freedom Now suite, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So the album cover is, and it's a large picture on the album cover of people sitting in at some place where Negroes are not to be served. It's not an actual, as it turns out, this is a posed photograph. Right. You know what I mean? It's not actually taken from one. Anyway, there it is. Like I say, we really would be good if we just had the picture here right now, just to give people a frame of reference. So it's an important moment. Now, here's how I said it, you know, last weekend. I was like, listen, this is a very major moment in our history. Now, if you want to talk about how Black music is, you know, responding to or reflecting the struggle of Black people in this particular period, late 50s, first part of the 60s for sure, it is in the realm of jazz where you will find that. You ain't going to find it in the blues. You ain't going to find it in what ain't calling it soul music yet. You ain't going to find it in rhythm and blues, but you'll find it in jazz. And Exhibit A would be the Max Roach Freedom Now suite. We Insist. That album cover itself is just so iconic. So that was definitive.
And Oscar Brown Sr.'s first album, you find it there.
That's true too. Yeah, Oscar Brown. Like I say, we don't talk about Oscar Brown enough. What did I want to say? So I was making the point that, like, I said, you know, I think one of the main cultural legacies of the sit-in movement is that is right there. We insist on freedom now, sweet. You know, you ain't got nothing like it. It's fairly singular. And then I just added on.
It's Pan-African.
Huh?
I mean, we insist the songs are Pan-African. The songs about Africa and the struggle. I mean, it's a broad.
It's a great record. It's a great record. And since we're talking about it, you go on YouTube and you can find a film performance of either most or all of those songs. It's actually online now. From it wasn't done in '60, it was done a few years later. And Abby's looking good as usual. Yeah. So you can check that out. But yeah, like you say, the first part of the album is like a history of the Black struggle in America. And the second part is, like you say, the connection with Africa, like All Africa, Tears for Johannesburg. I think that's the So like you said, it's beyond just reflecting the sit-in movement, but the broader, global struggle. And Max Roach, Abby Lincoln are in on that. I could go on. I'm going to stop. I just wanted to add one other thing. I also laid on, I said, and then beyond that, though, you got an album like Art Blakey's album, The Freedom Rider, which is in 1961. It doesn't have lyrics on it, but just the very fact, The Freedom Rider, that's obviously a reflection. And I just did a couple of examples. So the other thing about that, I mean, Freedom Rider was recorded in '61, but somehow it doesn't come out until 1964. I think the message is diluted a little bit at that point, but that's record company politics, what the artists were up to back then. Then the other thing I mentioned, just in terms of talking about the engagement of music in the civil rights movement, of course, Charles Mingus's Fables of Faubus. So I kind of took over and did the whole, all right, now let me tell you about some stuff y'all might not know. In terms of like some important music. So I think that it relates to your question, somewhat at least. Go
ahead, wrap up.
I said there might be more that you wanted that I didn't get to. I was done with that little anecdote.
Well, I think that's suggestive for folk. If you want to go more and bring us into the late 60s and 70s, right, we're going to see what's happening in jazz joined by R&B.
That's true.
In that period, right?
That's true. There's
an interesting piece here. Chicago artists are leading this consciousness wave from Oscar Brown to Curtis Mayfield. Even we come down to Earth, Wind, and Fire. If you really listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire, that's some conscious music. So you got a whole range of Chicago artists being central to pushing a blacker, more militant social consciousness. But I want to come to something contemporary. And my granddaughter, I took her to see Sinners yesterday.
I have not seen it yet. Just enough to let you know.
Oh, brother. Anyway, so this is what she said to me. Black folks own the cultural moment of 2025. Kendrick Lamar's performance at the Super Bowl and now Sinners. So you haven't seen Sinners, but
read about it. It seems interesting. I don't necessarily get out to see movies very soon, I used to go to the movies years and years ago, but it's not really a thing that one does very often. So something that's new, chances are I haven't, gone out.
But I'm going to come back to Kendrick Lamar.
Now, don't watch two things. Don't watch Super Bowl halftime, certainly. Don't even watch the Super Bowl itself. And so I didn't see this.
You still haven't seen it?
Well, you know what? All right, I guess that wasn't a completely true answer. You saw people writing about it. And so at some point, you did turn it on. I did turn it on, but I'm not really into the genre, the hip hop genre. I don't keep up. Certainly, I know.
Why are you not into the hip hop genre?
Hey man, you like what you like. You like what you like. You like what you like. So man, there's a whole lot to what you were saying. Maybe I should close this door. This dog might be getting a little rambunctious. That dog.
Whether to be honest with you, I'm surprised it's not my dogs.
Oh, that dog be hallucinating, man. He be barking at unseen things. This is a fact. This is a fact.
Unseen to you.
Huh?
Unseen and unheard to you.
Yeah, well, okay, that's a good
On
point.
another level.
That's a good point.
So,
that's a good point.
So should I, I had another kind of question about Fantastic Negrito and just the stuff coming out of Oakland. So should I assume that none of that's on your radar?
Well, I saw you mentioned Fantastic Negrito in your email earlier, and so I did click on a few pieces there as well. Damn, what was the title of that one piece? How Long? I'm sure that might be one of your favorites, maybe. How Long? No?
Yeah.
Okay. So my total exposure was today, earlier. So he sounds interesting, man. He sounds interesting, but apparently he's been pretty successful, Grammy Awards, and this sort of thing. But he sounds like somebody who's trying to be saying something. So, I'm not gonna say I loved it and say, well, let me just download a whole bunch of Fantastic Negrito songs, but it's good to know he's out there. And if somehow I was in a town and he was performing, I think that would be an interesting show to go to. I think that'd be interesting show to go to.
I think he's gonna put on a performance, but there's very few folk that are really just putting out music that I would say that speaks to the experiences of the Black working class, and particularly the lower sectors of the Black working class. That's the kind of sub-proletariat that's been, they're unhoused and all of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the few artists that is able to tell dignified portraits. Like a lot of hip hop cats, they might talk about those experiences, but it's it's lumpenism.
Not of the living bass heads and all.
No, it is not of the living bass heads.
Well, you see, now that says something about me. You talked about hip hop, and I just gave you a 35-year-old reference because I ain't keeping up. I ain't keeping up at all. So, I mean, this is probably off the beam in terms of where you want to go, but you said something like, well, why don't you? So hip hop, I just never dug it. Also, I mean, I remember back in the 70s.
You never dug it?
I never dug it, man. I was horrified by, what's that first record that was getting all that radio play in the summer of 79? Hip hop, hippie to the hip hop. The big hit, the first big rap song. Rappers,
yeah.
Rappers, what's going on here? What's going on here? And and then that other stuff, and I was like, man. So the other thing about me though,
so what, Public Enemy, Poor Righteous Teachers, The Cool.
No, man, I had friends saying, hey, you need to check these people out. And I'm familiar with a little bit of that stuff as well, but it's still if I'm going to listen to some music, I'm not going to really listen to somebody talking over a beat. Right on. But the other thing, I mean, so it's also, I'm also the one.
Would you have listened to Langston Hughes over Mingus?
Oh,
no, that's the thing in the 40s. Langston Hughes is reading his poetry, and Mingus' band is playing.
Yes.
You listen to that.
Oh, yeah, one digs that. One dug both Last Poets, the original Last Poets, and the other Last Poets.
You listen to Nicky Truth is on its way.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. No, man, everybody, let me stop that kind of talk. No, I dig that stuff. I did that stuff, but I haven't dug the stuff that this stuff since the end of soul. I haven't really dug that stuff. I haven't really.
Is it mode and form, or is it content, or all of the above?
It's both. It's both. But yeah, I mean, so I'm not entertained by that stuff. You know what I mean? I want to hear somebody sing or somebody play an instrument. This is just talking about me personally. I'm not trying to, have any impact on these people's careers, but I remain completely mystified by this like I'm completely mystified as to how or why, not how, but maybe why hip hop like took over the entertainment industry. It's I'm amazed by it. I don't understand it because I don't dig none of it. You know what I mean? Like I ain't trying to dig it though, you know? And so
you don't know my answer, brother.
I know you're in a different place.
It's the same reason Coon Souls took over in the late 19th century.
Okay. So hey, let's bring it back to like this you know, the job. You'll go for a second, it's relevant. So that was back in 05, and our department, Path and Studies department, was looking for, I remember the job ad, ethnomusicologist, an ethnomusicologist. I saw the ad, but I was like, I ain't no ethnomusicologist, so why would I apply? So what happened? They had a failed search, and they were like putting out, they're trying to like ask different people. And so Charles Jones, I mentioned him earlier. They contacted him and he said, why don't you talk to this cat up at UMass, because he might, you know, he might be able to serve your needs. And so, you know, had an interview and everything. And the chair, Ricky Jones, some of y'all might know, you interviewed Ricky Jones.
Yeah. You know, man, Ricky and I go back. Shit, Ricky and I go back 30-something years, man.
Okay, I need to find out more about that, actually.
And Emoji and I go back to 76. That's when we first met, RNA days.
RNA, hey man, I had a short-lived, what's the right word? Flirtation? Because I wasn't really, anyway, blah, blah, blah. We can get that another time. Where's that going? So, right, and you know, like I said, we already talked about me, my background. The dissertation was on jazz and the Black arts movement, you know, had a whole long history of like, what's the word, spinning records, mostly jazz, like quarter century and all that sort of such, and blah, blah, blah. And so he says, hey, listen, we want you to take the gig because we want somebody who's interested in, you know, connecting the arts to the larger Black experience, predicament, struggle, etc. And these people we've been coming in, these actual ethnomusicologists, they just got these extraordinarily narrow perspectives and it doesn't work for us. So we want you to come because we think you can do that stuff. And then he says, now here's the thing, you know, we need, I already know, I think I already heard that you don't like hip hop, but we need some hip hop courses in there. We need, you know, people
to attract the student body. Yeah,
exactly. And I was like, if you insist, you know. So I taught the hip hop class for a number of years.
Really?
I was disappointed though. I was generally disappointed because I was disappointed in the students' interest in learning. And this is a larger problem in academia and in Black studies too, to some degree, where people assume they know, you know, stuff that they don't know anything about really, including hip hop. I mean, I was very surprised back then. I haven't done this in a while, but I was surprised. I was like, these must only know the stuff that's got on the radio like now. They can't go back 5 years.
No, they cannot.
They go back 5 years. Now, for that. They all know
the moment when there's a trend when they start going back. Yeah.
So I was disappointed because they didn't want to really put any work in and learn this thing. And that's one. Anyway, I'll stop there. I'll stop there.
I feel
your familiarity behind trying to teach the course responsibly. But if you go like just for the sake, I mean, I got this iTunes with 21,000 songs on it, and there could be 2 or 3 hip hop songs. Could be 2 or 3.
Let me say that only very, very conscious art list, and it's a short damn list.
I bet it is.
And I can't figure out how to get, you know, because the only way I'm gonna listen to it is if the message got to be fire. Otherwise, I can't fool around. Like you, I like the singing voice, and particularly the singing voice of my ear. You know what I mean? You got to have a little bit of Southern accent or a lot of Southern accent for me to appreciate your voice.
No, man,
Right?
for real. I'm with you. I'm with
You know,
yeah.
you ain't sounding like David Ruffin. You know,
We
you're
talking.
not going to do it for me.
Yeah, we talking.
To
We
be
talk.
honest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to get. I could. This conversation for me could easily, like, you know, go into a. And it's not just I don't like hip hop. I even hate these people in terms of when they're trying to sing. I hate these whiny ass, nasal ass voices that I've been hearing the last quarter century. I can't stand to hear that stuff. But so let's not do that. Let's not do
Yeah,
that.
let's not do that because it will be a double dose of both of us commiserating on that question. So
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that anytime. We don't have to do it on
that's
here.
right. That's right. So my brother, let's go back to but not go back, but let's open up the questions around the state of Black Africana studies. Where do you see the discipline? What are the critical issues? And how should Black Africana studies scholars respond to the fascistic attacks from Trump and the MAGA race white supremacists?
All right, all right, all right. The last part. I mean, I'm not necessarily one who's certainly been an activist in these in this world of the academy and such like that. But I mean, we definitely need to, definitely make some collective statements. Like I said, what's the way of saying this? I mean, I'm one who really hasn't just as an individual, like be paying a whole lot of attention to campus politics and such like that. I'm not saying this is the path to follow, but I probably tend to go down there as infrequently as possible. If you ask me, do I even know, like, I don't know, 15 people who ain't in my department at this university? And I think the answer is no. So just in terms of just how I as an individual, just kind of approach the whole gig thing, there's sort of that. So yeah, I'm down to support any movement or cause or statement or what people want to do or feel is possible. That's also a part of me in terms of like relating to this, such as like a profound lack of belief in the institution itself. And so I guess that's probably
Let me jump to this, right?
okay. Do it.
A number of those executive orders really do call into question the existence of the discipline. Like Trump issued some crazy shit yesterday that really does get at whether or not the mere teaching of Black studies, which I know that we have some people who take positions that I find ludicrous, but in general, there is a sense of critique of the exploitation, abuse, and appropriation of African American people that comes out of Black studies across the various theoretical formats that people articulate, whether they're critical race theorists or Afro-pessimists, Afro-futurists, Afrocentrists, that they're, and certainly us Marxists, that there is a critique of American society.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump clearly is saying that that critique is should not be allowed to exist on college campuses. So are you seeing any examples, any gestures towards suppression? A former student of mine, Mika Makalani, who runs Black Studies at Johns Hopkins, he was told maybe 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, by his dean that he should expect a visitor, a monitor from the Department of Education to sit in on one of his classes.
Wow. Wow.
Now, if they sit in on any of our classes, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, exactly. It's already there. It's already
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So that's what I'm trying to get you to react to.
Well, how I want to say this. Like I say, you got the edicts coming out of the White House. You got that. You got the legislation coming out of the Kentucky legislature, and all of it obviously, hostile to our mission. And then you got the university, the university administrator saying we're trying to respond. We want to be, we're trying to be conscientious about this. We're trying to keep up with things, but let us assure you, that nothing these people have said directly impact academic departments, content of academic courses, et cetera, et cetera. And they're saying that sort of such. Maybe not today. You know what I mean? Maybe not today, but like so in other words, I mean, yeah, I think I'll go ahead and say this publicly. I mean, I don't believe these people. You know what I mean? I don't believe in them, and I don't believe what they say. What I mean is,
they got rid of the Middle East and African studies and something else at Columbia, right?
Yeah, or they didn't get rid of them, but they have to be overseen by some.
Okay, they're in receivership.
Yeah, I guess that's the proper term. That might be the proper term. That stuff, like I say, there's no immediate signs of that stuff coming here, but it don't. I mean, a lot of times it's not immediate. I mean, what I mean to say, a lot of times there isn't a whole lot of what's the word, advance.
The advance notification. That's
right. What I mean? So we had a faculty meeting, what is this, Thursday? I guess it was yesterday, and that was a significant topic. How are we going to respond? How are we going to try to protect things? One of the issues we were talking about at the meeting was, one thing, well, let me not get too long into this, but so the university has canceled, they used to have, prior to now, they've had these graduation celebrations for Black students.
Oh yeah, the Black congratulatories. Yeah.
They said no, you can't do that. I think they did the same thing with an LGBTQ sort of celebration or something. The people told to shut that down. So you got that other sort of such going on. So I mean, these people are not to be trusted because, with the whole White House situation, you know what I mean? What these people now believe they can get away with, I don't trust them, man. I'm not saying I don't trust. I'm not accusing every single person in a position of authority here of insincerity. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, they're going to protect themselves before they protect us.
Right.
And then
they're losing those grant dollars. Ain't no telling what they'll do.
Ain't no telling what they'll do, man. Ain't no telling. And I mean, I don't know how it is at up there in Champaign, but we actually kind of have. I mean, apart from the whole Trump thing and even the House Legislation Act, I mean, we kind of got some existential sort of issues we're really facing just in terms of enrollment numbers and such like that. In terms of their what's the word? I think there's more of a. Well, no one would admit this.
Have y'all seen a drop in admission of Black students? Because we sure as hell have. We're on a damn 25-year downward trajectory that's had a few dips where it moved back up, but it's basically been sliding downhill.
That I cannot answer. I mean, but the other thing, just in terms of facing us, man, I mean, so those are critical. And that's where they first come at you, in terms of really trying to destabilize the department. Hey, listen, what are your numbers? What are your enrollment hours? What are your majors and such like that? And that's where we're actually vulnerable. But another thing, in terms of us, in terms of, long term, I mean, we've been losing faculty over these past few years, and They ain't letting us replace none of them, man. We used to have like 15 people. We're down like 1 to 10, 1 to 10, and half of that number is like joint appointments. You know what I mean? So there's just a long-term attrition thing that also really challenges the long-term stability of the department. They're going to have to reverse if we're going to survive. A number of things got to happen, but one of the things that definitely have to happen, we do have to get some more faculty in here, particularly if we're going to maintain this graduate program, man. So those are some sort of existential issues that we face really outside of the direct fascistic assault, as you say, that concern us. So yeah, I mean, part of the meeting yesterday was us talking about how, we can have some more sort of collective resistance there as well. So there are a couple of things discussed. So yeah, we are under attack. I mean, but we have we not been since 1619? But what's going on right now is very grave, very grave. But do you think this mug is going to actually? I mean, he seemed to be such a damn fool. I think this shit is going to implode.
I think he's working his way toward it. He hasn't decided to make that move, or maybe he does have a timeline. But it's not going to be next week. It probably won't be this summer. But at some point, the logic of the executive orders that he is putting out is very, very clear, right? The last one last week, in terms of going after the museum of the African American, the National American Museum. If the exhibits and the markers and the placards that they do don't violate his notion of pushing what he calls a patriotic and entrepreneurial history, right? I don't see where we can compromise on those questions. But that's not what we teach, large numbers of us, right? So yeah, I think he has to come after us in a more forthright stance, because we're clearly teaching people what they don't want taught. There's no doubt.
I mean, it was up to him. I mean, we'd all be fired immediately and all our departments would be put out. But I guess what I was asking a little bit earlier was, I mean, this guy's such a fool. I think he's going to largely be unsuccessful. I mean, even well, we'll see. I mean, there's a question of spine for influential white people, for that matter. Even some influential black people, there's a question of spine in terms of resistance. But the guy seems to be such a fool that his program seems to, I think he's got to fail.
Well, I think he's going to overreach.
Yes, that's what I mean.
People coming behind him will be smarter and less emotional, more disciplined, right? I mean, even the people that he's put around him this time are more disciplined toward that agenda than the people he had during the first run. But I do think that as a discipline, Black Africana Studies and its various sub-disciplines, that we need to be strategizing collectively, not as individual departments and not as subfields or fields in the discipline. We need a disciplinary response.
Can I ask you?
Go ahead.
Can I ask you, like, what do you see as some potentially effective sort of actions that I feel might take? I mean, I know we can articulate any given thing. You know what I mean? I know that our powers of articulating the problem and critiquing the system, I know they're there, but on the question of what can be effective in terms of getting these institutions to, I guess, allow us a space to do what we do, or to continue to allow us space. I mean, because the system, as long as this society is in its current structure, the system is going to serve, capitalism is going to serve, the powerful. But like, do you have a sense of like, I mean, this is such a rarefied thing, all right? A particular section of the professoriate.
I think it's at two levels, right? One is our ability to find organizations in the community that will take up our positions, and very much so that groups like legislative Black caucuses that wield significant power in a number of states. Like nothing can happen in the Illinois government, right? Because the Black caucus is 25% of the House of Representatives.
Okay.
They have the numerical strength, even when not building an alliance with the Latina caucus or the progressive caucus. They had a capacity to block shit. They had a capacity to build coalitions to push through their kind of agenda. And there are a number of other states there. The thing about these politicians is that they don't understand the academy. They don't understand the depth of how to message around that. Those are skills that we, in fact, have. So I would argue that, in each state, we need to begin to build relationships with our legislative Black caucuses. But we have to basically do what Walter Rodney talked about, grounding with our brothers and sisters in the community, so that we are building effective challenges that manifest itself at the local level, right? So there are a number of places where we are majority, or we're a plurality, where we can get things out of local government, city councils, etc. So I think that we got to understand, as a discipline, we have to be more political, and that political activism can't be something that some of us teach anymore. It must be something that all of us practice.
No, man, I concur. I definitely think that's something that needs to be done. The first part of your question earlier, I took the second part. I don't know if that, what we've been talking about now, encompasses the first part. I don't remember but whatever, you take us wherever you want to go from here.
Well, the first part you didn't really take up, as you say. Yeah, what's the state? Where are we? In a number of ways, like I tried never to descend into pessimism, right? So I took the H. Rap Brown, Jamil Al-Amin slogan, that translates into "We will win." Right? But when we look at Black studies as a national entity, it ain't what it was. And it seems to be peopled by folks that are not connected to the things that you and I were connected to in terms of community. And they tend to be more alienated from Black communities. And
all true.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I personally will end up in the same position as you in terms of like, being able to successfully avoid pessimism. But what are some things that I observe? So I don't know, man. When you look at the NCBS, when you look through the the annual conference and you look through the papers, do you see a lot, that really is interesting to you, or do you think it's like, okay, yeah,
I would say no, but I haven't been to an NCBS conference in a while because I've
oh,
shifted my time into a solid Associate for the Study of African American Life and
okay.
History. But I do look and see, what the trends are, and I would say that there is a lot more navel gazing,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for saying that.
a lot more disconnection from community, and a more depoliticized, but at the same time, greater emphasis on various cultural aspects.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a nationalist, so culture means something to me, but there's an overemphasis. There's a separation from the social historical conditions under which cultures are created and sustained. And so political economy slips out. And if we don't center political economy, I don't know that the cultural stuff makes any sense anyway. That would be my argument. Yeah.
No. I mean, I see that. And then, I look at over the years, our graduate students, particularly our doctoral students, in terms of like the subject matter that they're interested in, and
Yeah.
I would just echo some of the earlier points you make. I'm going like, where does this go? How does this, like, how does this improve understanding of our situation and such like that? But so I'm concerned from that standpoint. I mean, the other piece, and this is not just looking at us, but just in general, like I say, at the conference and everything, it's like, I don't know, man. I think we are at a moment where a significant percentage of the young or younger people attracted or interested or pursuing this thing, it's so career driven. That might be inherent, right? I mean, I think that's inherent, but like, I just think the careerism, I ain't gonna say it's completely taken.
Well, here's what we say: the proportion of it that's totally driven by career versus the proportion of it that's driven by desire to liberate our people has shifted.
Okay, I give you that.
Dominantly toward career.
Yeah, and it's like
not like it was off the table, but yeah.
Well, and that leads into something we definitely don't have time to talk about now, but just in terms of, like you say, what's the historical trajectory of our field? This thing was created out of a movement, but then by definition, any sort of long-term, long-term housing, in these institutions, you get caught. So the Black Studies professoriate is largely just like any other professoriate in terms of what is motivating people, what's driving people.
Not, yeah. But this is the thing about these moments, right? Yeah. As you say, this is an existential crisis for us as a people and an existential crisis for us as a discipline. This is a moment in which, given the attack that's on Black Studies, I think that we can reconnect people to some of the earlier objectives, and that the pressure is such that in order to save their jobs, they may have to learn to fight.
That's a good point, man. That's a good point. I mean, it would seem that way, it would seem that way, man, because they definitely, we've been saying it, though, for years, that, we know they're going to come after us, but like, we're here now. I think we definitely, they're coming after us, and they feel emboldened. And so we're just going to have to see, Yeah. You're right. I mean, I agree with you. Resistance, is the only way forward. So we got to figure out some collective ways to I mean, I'm not really comfortable with that whole notion of making our voices heard. That's still sounds to me.
See, me and you share that. I mean, I think that that's actually just people that don't study strategy. Speak truth to power is basically just a dumbass thing. Right. Our task is always and should be to organize our people, speak truth to the people. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
I agree.
So, you got any last observations or any announcements? Well, I know you want to promote the talks, the YouTube pieces.
The series. All right. So our last PAS and Friends Conversations in Black for this year.
PAS and Friends. What's PAS?
That's our department, Pan-African Studies.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So PAS, that's the shorthand around here. Yeah, I guess you have to be around it to know it, like PAS. But yeah, it took me a while to catch on. Oh, that's us, PAS. What do I want to say? So the last one is coming up on May 19th. We're switching off from Saturday to Monday. We're going to do a
birthday?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, there'll be a lot of competition for things that are going on that day. But, there's only, how many times do we get that 100th anniversary? So,
right.
So we're going to do it on the 19th. And I'm going to talk to you about this stuff later as well. Just like the SNCC one last Saturday was the launch of a series because the subject is so vast, the SNCC Chronicles. So we're starting the Malcolm X inquiries, right? Because similar, you and I and Jakia and Baba Zach, we were in there for 3 hours, and I feel like we just scratched the surface, bro.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So we're going to start a series, and we'll launch it on May 19th. And by series, I don't mean every week or next week. I'm just saying that will be an ongoing part of
throughout the year, because it is 100th anniversary. I got you.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm just saying it's ongoing, just like the SNCC. I said over the next couple of years, and the same with Malcolm. Over the next couple of years, we ain't know. You know what I mean? We're launching it, but that'll launch it on May 19th. And so I talked about how you need to really kind of, what's the word? Identify specific aspects. And even then you still, because that's how I felt about SNCC. We tried to focus just on 1960 and it was useful, but you still come away going, man, we're just trying to do 1960 and we still kind of just scratched the surface. Anyway, let me finish up. So the one on May 19th, we're starting the Malcolm X inquiries, and it's what? The OAU, the OAAU, and Pan-Africanism. We ain't gonna finish that in 2 hours either. But that's, you see, at least trying to, identify specific to at least try to sink your teeth into a little bit. But yeah, the OAU, Organization of African Unity, if you were gonna get me to announce it for the people, and then Malcolm X's Organization of Afro-American Unity, and Pan-Africanism. So we got a Pan-African Studies department. Anyway, these are living topics. What is Pan-Africanism today, et cetera. So that's a little part of the conversation. So anyway, that's coming up. What is that? A little less than about 3.5 weeks from now.
About 3.5 weeks, yeah.
So we'll be getting the word out to whatever extent we get the word out. But yeah, I'm excited about that. So I thank you for the opportunity to make that little announcement. And for inviting me to come here and, chop it up a little bit.
Brother, it's always a pleasure to hook up with you. And I appreciate you for, taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on the show. And I enjoyed and learned from the conversation as always. So I'm going to take you out. I'm going to
Okay.
take myself out, and then I'm going to put on our ending credits, and then we're going to end this live stream.
Okay. Cool.
Ashanti.
Peace.
Peace.